Have you ever in your adult life looked at your educated self in the mirror and thought, I should be further ahead in my life by now, so why do I feel dumb and why am I stuck at this level? You are not alone, because the smartest thing you can do is go to school, which you already did. But you can spend 19 years in school and still be stuck because school makes you look smart but not be smart. In most of the world, you're told that it takes 7 years of elementary school, 5 years of high school, 4 years of college, and probably 2 additional years of graduate school to become smart. But what you actually become is obedient, good at memorizing, and really confident about things you don't know how to use. That's not even a joke. But on the bright side, your mother has all your graduation pictures proudly hanging on her living room wall, so that's a consolation. But what I'm trying to say in a roundabout way is that school can actually make you dumb, and I'll explain. School trains you to collect information, repeat it on command, and then immediately forget it the moment it stops being graded. That's not intelligence, that's storage. And the problem is your brain hates storage, and you know what happens when someone hates something, right? And there's an actual study on this. A German psychologist named Ebbinghaus found that if you don't use new information, your brain forgets most of it within a day. So when school teaches you something you won't use for 10 years, your brain is like, yeah, no, and deletes it. So even though school is pretty cool, the problem is most of what you learn in school is so vague, so unrealistic in real life, and so philosophical that the only people who could actually follow it are Oprah and Socrates. But for most of us, what we learned in school has so far failed to translate to useful skills, ideally skills that make us money. Most of what we learned has failed to make us good at solving problems, hopefully problems we can solve for money. Let me give you a clear example. The quadratic formula, you memorized it. You passed the test, and then life said, cool, use it. But where? No one has ever been in a meeting at work and said, wait, this problem requires x equals negative b plus or minus. So here's the problem. School teaches you formulas. Life doesn't care about formulas. School trains you to wait for instructions like a lapdog, and if no one tells you what to do, you freeze. That's why most of the stuff in school textbooks sound like they were written by someone who's never had to solve a real problem in real life. When you graduate and get into the real world and begin to encounter real life, you realize you don't have the skills and knowledge to actually get ahead in life, because most of what you learned in school is unusable. Education researchers call this the transfer problem. It turns out being good at school problems does not mean you're good at real problems. Which explains why straight-A students freeze when an interviewer asks, how would you solve this? So I'm sure you get the point that despite your shiny diploma hanging on your mother's wall, you know you have to actually learn something and use it in real life to know it. Because your brain only remembers things it thinks are useful, and sadly, school teaches you information years before you'll ever need it, if you need it at all. So your brain does the logical thing, it deletes it. That's why people graduate and then feel stuck. And as if that's not enough, school really messes people up by telling them to read. Reading is great and it's a window to learning, but school taught you that reading equals learning, but they lied. It doesn't. Reading is information gathering, but unless you practice what you read, your brain assumes the information is useless, and that's why you forget everything you read within a few days. There's a name for this, it's called the illusion of competence. Basically, your brain mistakes recognition for understanding. You read it, it looks familiar, you think you know it. Then life asks you to use it, and suddenly you're as mute as someone whose phone just died mid-call. That knowledge you got from just reading doesn't become a skill, sadly, and without skills, you do not stand out in interviews or businesses, and so you do not win. So if you don't use the knowledge you have, it will never become a skill, and so your brain deletes it, and you only need about 20% of the knowledge to get 80% of the results. That's called the learning curve. I realized this when I left school and noticed something weird. The people doing well weren't the smartest. In fact, the smartest of us were working in companies built by people at the bottom of the class. It makes no sense. School smart is not street smart. School smart is street dumb. So reading and learning are cool, but only if you do something with that knowledge. If you don't believe me, tell me if this is true. No one ever learned how to tie a tie by watching a video about tying a tie. You learn by watching the video while tying the tie. Isn't that true? The same applies to reading. If you read a chapter about cleaning a kitchen, go clean a kitchen. Doesn't have to be yours, just clean one, and now you'll remember it forever. If you read a book about writing an essay, go write an essay and the skill will stick. But what if you can't practice right away? Let's say you're reading about the economics of supply and demand. You don't have any real-world concrete examples you can model at the time. You don't control a market. You can't raise prices and see what happens. That's fine, just imagine it. By imagining the full process, you've tricked your brain into thinking you use the information, and now it sticks. Meanwhile, the person who memorized the supply and demand curve without any inkling to how it plays out in real life still panics when they actually experience the supply and demand a real-life situation. This is how intelligence actually works. School already knows this, that's why they test you. A test is just an imaginary situation where the information suddenly matters. This is basically how the entire school system works. You learn a piece of information, and because it'll be like 15 years before you actually use it, your teacher creates an imaginary situation where that information appears useful. If you can imagine it, you will get the answers right, and if you get the questions wrong, you fail and get a red star, though in China you get prison time. Just kidding, that's only if you cheat. But to be frank, a test is usually enough to make your brain at least attempt to remember the information for later. The only problem is once the test is over, your brain says it's not useful anymore and deletes the information. That's why constant practicing helps, because they simulate real life. Harvard even tested this. Students who practiced remembered the material longer. Students who just listened forgot it faster. Practice made it stick. If real life isn't testing you yet, test yourself. Convince your brain the stakes are real. Make it feel real enough that your brain wakes up. Pretend you're dangling from a helicopter and they won't pull you in until you get it right. Is it dramatic? Yes. Does it work? Also yes. And this is why getting your hands dirty doing the thing you are learning is the best way to be smart. Get the information and solve the problems. They're not fun, but they work. Unlike school, which makes learning feel productive while quietly making you dumber. So yeah, school can make you look smart and still leave you dumb when it actually matters. Meanwhile, your mom still thinks the degree guarantees success. It's okay, she framed it and hung it on her wall anyway. So what now? This advice came too late and you are already out of school. How can you get less dumb despite your education? Well, you read, but not the way school trained you to read. But this time, don't read just to finish a book. You read to change your behavior. Every time you read something useful, ask one question. What would this look like in real life? Then do the smallest version of it. Not perfectly, just enough to scare your brain into paying attention. If you read about communication, say the thing you usually avoid. If you read about money, track one expense today. If you read about business, go do the thing. That's how smart people are made, not by knowing more, but by using more. Secondly, explain what you're learning. If you really understand something, you should be able to explain it to a friend, to a coworker, even to yourself. If you can't explain it simply, you don't know it yet. And lastly, stop learning ahead of time. School taught you to learn everything just in case. Life doesn't reward that. Life rewards people who learn when a problem shows up. If you learn when you need it, it sticks better. That's how you stop being smart on paper but dumb in real life. And if you made it this far, the smartest thing you can do right now is subscribe so I can keep offending education systems worldwide.